Good morning. I want to begin by offering a word of thanks to our staff. I want to thank Hillary and Irina for their beautiful music. It continues to get better each and every week. Thank you both for the hard work you put into your gift of song and playing. I also want to offer a word of thanks for Tilly and for Catherine and for Jonathan for your readings and prayers this morning and for your creativity in helping us to put together these worship services each and every week. Most importantly, I want to thank each of you for your participation in this act of virtual worship. It is good to come together as the people of Sardis Baptist Church and offer praise and thanksgiving and joy to a good and wonderful God on a good and wonderful Sunday morning. Our lesson this morning comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 31 and 30, verses 31 through 33, as well as verses 44 through 52. Hear now these good words. Jesus put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree so that the birds of the air come and make nest in its branches. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field which someone found and hid. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, the merchant went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? Jesus asked. The disciples answered, Yes. And Jesus said to them, Therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Sardis Baptist Church, these are good words from a good God for you, a good people. Thanks be to God. This morning's sermon is entitled Kingdom Stuff. This morning's sermon is entitled Kingdom Stuff. If you wanted to farm a field or plant a garden or have that field or garden produce good results, most people would tell you that there needs to be order. Straight rows of crops properly distanced with seeds measured and applied with precision. There are instructions on the back of those seed packets for a reason. If you wanted to prepare a healthy meal, most people would tell you that clean hands and a clean surface and fresh produce and ingredients are a good place to start. If you wanted to make a sound, secure financial investment or purchase a piece of property, most people would tell you to find someone with credentials and with a reputation of being trustworthy. If you wanted to purchase a string of pearls for that special someone, most people would encourage you to find a vendor with a high rating from the Better Business Bureau. Jesus, the farmer, says, Can I interest you in a weed? Oh, sure, you might think it's useless, only good for staining white shirts and flavoring your soft pretzels or occupying too much space for too long in the side door of your refrigerator. And sure, I know you like plants that do what they are told, not ones that grow at their own discretion, tangling everything in their wake and growing bigger and faster than Audrey 2 in Little Shop of Horrors. But trust me, this little seed's a keeper. Jesus, the baker, says, how about a little yeast? Oh, sure, it's the discards, the spoiled leftover bread. It's not clean, and if you don't handle it just right, it can be both dangerous and worthless. And even if you do handle it just right, it's going to take a lot of work to get it where it needs to be. But trust me, this yeast has got potential. Jesus, the investor, says, have I got a deal for you, Sardis Baptist Church? I know a guy. He's unconventional. Some might even say he pushes the limits of legality, but he's good. He'll find that perfect piece of property for you. Jesus, the bargain hunter, says, now you might think I'm crazy, friends, but if you're looking for an engagement ring for that special somebody, you got to go to that place that also doubles as a bowling alley and a lion taming academy. Quality stones, quality service, good people. The kingdom of heaven is a reclamation project. God takes what the world is too quick to discard and transforms worldly scraps into divine plenty. A pesky mustard seed, something too small to even see, can grow into a large bush that will provide shade for a whole ecosystem. Yeast, a spoiled, smelly, unclean substance, and not much of it at that, can make enough bread to feed a banquet. And speculators and merchants, the kind of folk that trespass to find buried treasure or go deep into the seedy underbellies of illegal markets to find rare items, and the kind of folk that always seem to be bound up in reeling in the next big fish, find treasures and pearls so fulfilling that they quit the game altogether. It seems to me that we keep expecting the kingdom of heaven to be delivered to us in an Amazon package, approved for us by those who fit the bill of churchgoers, ordered in the same way our social systems are governed and maintained, doled out to us with the regularity, efficiency, and certainty of a pension fund. But Jesus tells us that the kingdom of heaven isn't shiny, and it isn't predictable, and it sure isn't sensible. It's messy. It's actually the messiness that's all around us. Jesus illustrates the nearness of kingdom living by taking all of the ordinary messiness around him and inviting others to see God working in that messiness. It's also worth mentioning that mustard seeds and yeast and speculators and merchants are troublemakers, maybe even the good kind that John Lewis used to speak of. I have this image in my mind of rows and rows and rows of long church pews filled with people sitting rigidly, all dressed predictably, all captive to their worship force fields, all speaking in unison, convinced that their conformity and their righteousness and their precision will bring about God's reign. And in their midst, I see some troublemakers. There's a fellow in a mustard-colored shirt who sits when everyone stands and stands when everyone sits, and he does it with pizzazz and confidence and grace. And there's another who looks a bit disheveled, unshowered, hair uncombed, and a dozen shirt tails hanging out, if that's even possible. And yet his piety is captivating. There's another congregant a few rows back. She's offering executive summaries of the service to help expedite the process. She sees the stagnant nature of her peers, and she wants to help them break through all the complexities and all the layers and get back to God's simplicity. Still, another woman, a few rows further back, holds a protest placard. "Start being church again," it reads. She will persist until she provokes action. Sardis Baptist Church, if we're going to be the church that illumines the closeness of God's kingdom, we've got to stop credentialing the ordered and predictable, and we've got to start credentialing the pesky and the provocative and the eccentric and the odd and the weird. That is, the wonderful, awkward, real, authentic people and places and things among us. We've got to see beauty in weeds. We've got to get our hands dirty, even when the world tells us it's not a good idea. We've got to believe in a barter system that isn't concerned with short straws. And what might this look like? Maybe it's willingness to be moved by the Spirit via worship produced in the makeshift studio of a 10-year-old iPhone. Maybe it's willingness to see uncomfortable protest, especially the type that threatens our privilege and that grows in disorderly fashion, as an agent that can provide long-term shelter and sustenance for our communities. Maybe it's a willingness to believe that it's the spirit of God's people, not the look or the form or the systems of God's people, that illumine kingdom living. Maybe it's an acknowledgement that when we proclaim the lordship of Christ and the Easter resurrection and the witness of our saints, we also buy into God's potential and indeed God's desire to breathe life-giving, soul-changing, heart-moving transformation into the people and the places and the things we too often deem ordinary and unremarkable and unredeemable. Our lection this morning ends with a catch of fish. And because Matthew is Matthew, we also have to hear about how those fish are going to be sorted, good ones and bad ones. I hope the first 4 parables aren't lost on you. If we were to read the sorting part first, we might assume that there was lots of bad stuff in our world. But so far, weeds and yeast and merchants and retailers, troublemakers, if you will, have all been placed in good baskets. Perhaps, Sardis Baptist Church, the kingdom is near when we choose to claim our neighbors, even the troublemakers, instead of seeking to sort them. We do, after all, belong to a maker who has shown a patience and a grace and a goodness and a determination to teach us how to farm, and to teach us how to cook, and to teach us how to procure what it is that is good. Friends, may we have ears to listen, and eyes to see, and hands and heart and feet to follow. And may it be soon. Amen.